is Dr. Thierry Besancon from RUTGERS University, who's a weed specialist, which we welcome to our area. He's going to discuss integrated weed management in berry crops. As he progresses, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat box, and we'll take care of those when we're done. Thierry, all yours.
Okay, thank you, Mary, for the introduction. So as Mary said, I'm the new weed science extension specialist for RUTGERS University, specifically working on specialty crops. Here at RUTGERS, I'm very specialized on blueberry, cranberry at the research station in New Jersey. So today I will present you another view of integrated weed management in berry crops. Just to give you an outline of what will be the presentation today. So we'll be discussing a little bit of weed biology basics. We'll be discussing weed ID on scouting. I will be presenting different strategies for weed control in blueberry. I'm mostly focused on blueberry, but if you have questions on other type of berry, we can discuss that a little bit later, probably. So just to give you just an idea of why weed control matters in berries. So weeds may be responsible for direct losses to the crop, so you can have reduced crop yield through crop competition. So weeds can compete for water, they can compete for nutrients, they can compete for light, for space. With the competition, you will have a reduction of your crop yield. Some weed species can produce some allelochemical. So basically, an allelochemical, it's a natural product which is produced by the weeds, and that may have some detrimental activity on the crop. So, for example, if you're familiar with Johnson grass, that's a kind of sorghum. This one is producing sorghaleon, which is an allelochemical. It's produced through the roots, and sorghaleon has some natural herbicidal properties. So it will not kill the crop, but it may reduce the development. It may restrain the growth of the crop. If you have very weedy situation, you may reduce harvesting efficiency at the time of harvest. Because of the weed, we can lose fruit quality or value of what you're harvesting. So that's what we're calling the direct losses, generally speaking. Indirect losses, since you have to get rid of the weed, you will have to increase your crop production cost. Depending on the weed management strategies that you're deciding, you can have damage on the crop. So, for example, if you're using herbicide, herbicides are not innocuous product. Herbicide can have some detrimental effects on the crop as well. Similar situation if you're working with some cultural weed methods. So if you're disking the soil, you can cause injury to the roots that later will be translated in yield losses. And finally, I would say that among the indirect losses, weeds can be perfect host for pests and disease as well. So that's different reason why we need to control the weeds. In any integrated weed management program, the most important step is really weed identification. So with weed identification, you will determine which type of weed control is needed. Just to remind you that if you're using herbicide, no herbicide will control all weeds. Systemic herbicide, for example, like Roundup, will be well fitted for perennial and biennial weeds. Contact herbicide like Gramoxone will only work on annual weeds. They don't have any translocation activity, meaning that they cannot kill the underground storage, the underground storage part of the weeds that are good for the perennials, that are providing perennials to last over the time. If you're able to do some weed ID, you can help identify different cultural problems. So, for example, yellow nutsedge rushes are really well adapted to wet spots. Spurge, on the other hand, you will mostly find them in the dry areas of the field. On the right side of the slide, I put you a picture of the book that we are mostly using for weed ID in the Northeast. That's a book that has been published quite a few years ago now by Cornell University, Richard Yuba, Joe Neal, and Jody Tomaso. That's still the best reference in terms of book speaking for weed ID in the Northeast. So you can go to the Cornell website. I put the web link right here. So if you're interested in buying the book, that's really the best book that we have for the Northeast. So just just looking at some weed ID, basic weed ID. So usually we are classifying weeds depending on the life cycle. On the easiest one are really the annual weeds. That's the first step in terms of classification. So annual weeds are all the weeds that will complete their life cycle in 1 year, starting with seed germination, going through the vegetative growth, blooming, and then seed formation. And they will die at some point after finishing the cycle. And all these species are spreading by seed, so it's a sexual reproduction. A few examples of annual weeds: common purslane on the top right, horseweed on the bottom right, common chickweed are typical annual weeds. Within the annual weeds, we are usually separating between the winter and the summer annuals. The winter annual will grow from fall to late spring. They will tend to disappear during summer. For example, chickweed, henbit, annual bluegrass are typical examples of winter annual weeds. On the other hand, we have the summer annual weeds. This one will grow from spring to fall, and they will be killed by the low temperature in fall. So crabgrass, purslane are good examples of summer annual. Just here to give you some picture, henbit is really a typical winter annual broadleaf weed. Right now, it's a perfect time to see henbit in the field starting to bloom, giving this beautiful purple coloration actually, but it's really winter annual. You will not find it in summer. Some summer annual broadleaf weeds. I'm dealing with veggies as well. So Gelinsoga on the left side is really a big problem in veggies. Long squarter on the top right, it's a summer annual. On morning glories obviously are even late summer annual because these ones are germinating late in the season. Some winter annual grasses, and again, I mean, we're separating on broadleaf species, basically dicots, 2 cotyledons, on grasses, monocots, just 1 cotyledons. So among the monocot, among the grasses, we have the winter annual, like Italian ryegrass, annual bluegrass, really obvious to see right now if you're looking at your lawn, where you have the green patch in your lawn, most of the time it's annual bluegrass. We have some summer annual grasses as well, crabgrass, goosegrass, barnyard grass, all of them are summer annual grasses. Crabgrass will start to germinate really late in the season, probably not before June, early July. Goosegrass maybe a little bit earlier in the season. So we have also the biennial weeds. This one will require 2 growing seasons. So the first year they will produce this vegetative growth. So that's what you see on the left picture, the rosette of evening primrose. So on this rosette, during the first year, the plant will accumulate nutrients, water. On the second year, the plant will use all these nutrients that have been accumulated the first year to produce a stem with flowers. On the plant will set seeds and dies later in the season. So the plant is really, working on a 2-year cycle. Some example of biennial weeds: yellow rocket, bull thistle, evening primrose are typical biennial weeds. On bull thistle, I didn't say Canada thistle. Canada thistle, which is the most problematic thistle, is a perennial weed. So that's the next step. So perennial weeds are the weeds that are living for 3 years or more. They will spread by seed, sexual reproduction. For example, dandelion is a perennial weed that will spread through seed production. But they can also, some of them can also spread to vegetatively, so through asexual reproduction. And that's what we have on the picture right here on the bottom. So we have yellow nutsedge. If you're looking at the right picture, you can see the little nuts on the root system. There is one which is visible under next to the stem. You can see these little nuts that will give a new generation the very next year. These one are not sexual reproduction, it's reproduction, it's vegetative reproduction basically. So among the perennial, we have a lot of woody plants, we have trees and shrubs, and usually these one are the most difficult to control because they have a way to survive, the winters. They will start again the next year from the vegetative, the underground parts of the plant. Some example of perennials: yellow nutsedge, red sorrel. Actually, red sorrel is the one on the top picture. And dandelion are good example of perennial weed that we have to deal with in berries on veggies crop. So why does it matter to do a correct weed ID? Well, just to give you some very simple example, if you have a good identification, if you know that you're dealing with annual weed, then you can use mowing, for example, as a way of controlling the weed. Because if you're able to remove flowers and prevent seed production, you will cut the cycle of the plant. Basically, you will prevent the replenishment of the seed bank, and that's a good way of controlling some of these annual weeds. If you don't do a good job at identifying the weed, you can try cultivation. For example, if you're dealing with perennial weed that have a rhizome or stolon, like Canada thistle, sorry. If you're dealing with cultivation, then you will cut the rhizome and you will contribute to the spread of these weeds, because each individual part of the rhizome, as long as you have a node on the rhizome, it will generate a new plant again. So if you're cultivating, you can cut the rhizome, spread it, and spread the weeds. Bad identification: if you're planning to use a contact herbicide when you're dealing with a perennial weed, well, you will not get the translocation of the herbicide, and you will not be able to kill the undergrowth storage structures, the rhizome and the tubers. So the weed will be able to start a new generation the very next year. So I gave you on this slide a few online resources for weed ID. So you have different websites from Virginia Tech, Penn State, RUTGERS has a website, Ohio State has a website as well. University of Delaware has some key for identifying grasses and broadleaf weeds. And Virginia Tech and University of Missouri have developed application for your cell phone where you can directly have your weed ID guide on the cell phone when you're in the field. That's really when you mostly need to get it. So I guess that's something I would like to get more apps like that, because it's really when you're in the field scouting for weeds, on having your app in the pocket, that's really nice for doing a good job at identifying the weeds. So scouting for weeds, that's another step which is really essential to any integrated weed management program. So it will help you to determine what are the weed species that are present in the field. It will give you the information, if the weeds are at the right stage that can be controlled with herbicide or cultivation. It will provide you information on the level of infestation. It can provide you information on if you manage to get crop injury from previous herbicide application. These days, something which is really getting even more important is really, if you're using herbicide, we are starting to get so many herbicide-resistant weeds that if you're applying an herbicide, if you have a herbicide-resistant situation in your field, that may be a good way by doing regular scouting to determine if you have herbicide resistance. That's really important to consider, because it will change your weed management strategy for the future. Okay, so for scouting for weeds, that's not something that is done just once a year. Obviously, if you're looking at this table where we have the relative emergence of common weed species, for example, in fall you will have the emergence of horseweed. You can have the biennial thistle, the wild carrot, the dandelion are plants that will start to emerge in fall. Early spring will be good time for lady stem, common lawn squarter, orchard grass, foxtail, barley. Later in the season, May to mid-June, you will have different weed species emerging. And finally, up to early summer, morning glories and crabgrass are really the late one to emerge. You can still see flush of germination of crabgrass up to early August. So, it's really important to have a scouting program that can really account for all these different weed emergence timing. So that's what we have right here. So that's just an idea what is the timing that we are using in blueberry for scouting for weed management. So usually at this time of the season, when we are about to apply the pre-emergence herbicide, We are scouting for determining what weeds have already emerged, what are the weeds that have not been controlled with the fall application. It will help us determine, do we need to tank mix with a post-emergence treatment in spring for controlling what is already there. Usually we are doing surveys post-bloom to determine if when are we starting to lose the control that we have with the pre-emergence herbicides that we applied in spring, in late winter, early spring. If we are doing some post-emergence application, especially for controlling grasses, we want to get post-herbicide evaluation from mid-May to early June. Usually August, September, we want to have some post-harvest weed survey, because if we need to apply some post-emergence late in the season for taking care of some weeds, that's the time when we need to do it. Obviously, if you're planning to have some pre-emergence application in fall, you need to schedule a weed survey prior to this fall application. Scouting methodology, usually I'm doing 2 to 3 stops per acre. Each stop I will scout 30 feet length of crop. I will record what kind of weeds are in the field. Just get a rough idea of what is a weed growth stage. Just measuring the height should be enough. Number of plants, so we'll just quantify, do we have a low, medium, high infestation of weeds? Very important, we are recording the crop energy as well. So let's now discuss our weed management strategies. And the first one that I really want to insist on this strategy is really looking at prevention. So prevention is problem avoidance. It's like if you are going to see your physician, you prefer to act, before starting to get a disease and starting to try to cure the disease when you started to get it. So it's the same thing with weeds. Prevention is every type of method that we can have in the field for preventing weeds to come first place in the field. So just to give you some example of prevention, if you're using irrigation, make sure that the irrigation will not carry weed seeds with the water. So just don't introduce weed seed when you're irrigating. In the field or on the field border, you want to prevent the weeds from going to seed. Again, that's this idea that you need to cut the production of seed. So you need to prevent the weed to replenish the seed bank. It may not pay the first year, it may not pay the second year, but after 10 years, if you're consistent in doing this prevention. So I was discussing prevention, and really the general idea is really to get prevent the weeds from going to seed and prevent the replenishment of the soil seed bank. If you're using mulch or compost, you really want to do a nice job at composting, because if you're respecting the temperature and the humidity for doing a nice composting, you may reduce the weed seed viability through a nice composting of your mulches and compost. If you're using equipment, you really want to clean equipment when you're moving from an infested area to a non-infested field. Just to give you an idea, that's on the left side we have a picture of a brush mower. So the right picture, it has been a mower that has been used to mow dandelion. If you're not cleaning all these seed that just accumulated on the back of the mower, it will be a perfect source of infestation, of weed infestation in the next field. So make sure that you're doing a good job at cleaning the equipment. Right here on the right side, it's one of the blueberry plantation here at the station. Sorry for that. On the weed that you see on the first, the first weed that you see on the picture, it's actually Carolina redwood. Carolina redwood is really specific to the cranberry bed. So here in New Jersey, we are using the residue of cranberry, the leaf, twigs, some fruit that have been that are removed when we are cleaning the cranberries. We are using that as a compost. And obviously, we didn't do a good job at composting these residues, because we are starting to introduce the Carolina redwood. And this one is really coming from the cranberry beds. This one is really for blueberries, so weed management between the rows. We are doing a lot of in-crop cultivation here in New Jersey. It has some good short-term benefits. You will eliminate the weeds, you will improve the water penetration. You may want to do a little bit of root pruning, meaning that you will stimulate the root development over time. You will increase oxygen level by cultivating, which will oxidize organic matter, and in turn, it will release adsorb nutrients by degrading the organic matter. But it's not a good long-term strategy, I would say, because, I mean, over time, you may face soil erosion, either with wind or water. You will drastically reduce your organic matter. And just to give you an example, in New Jersey, some soil, we went from 5% in some situations to less than 0.5% of organic matter, after cultivating for 30, 40 years. So that's not a good strategy. The root may be more vulnerable to disease because basically you're destroying the organic matter, so you're changing the balance in microorganisms in the soil, which may increase the vulnerability of the root to soil-borne disease. And over the time, if you're degrading the organic matter, you will have lower nutrients and water holding capacity of the soil. Using organic mulch, definitely, because you're creating a barrier on the row, you will prevent the emergence of weeds. You can increase organic matter content. You will increase moisture retention. These organic mulch are really good at preventing soil erosion. One of the biggest challenge that we're facing with organic mulch is really the high carbon to nitrogen ratio, meaning that if you want to fertilize your berries, you really need to bump your nitrogen rate, because otherwise all the nitrogen will be consumed by the microorganisms that are degrading the organic mulch. So that's one of the main disadvantages of this organic mulch. Just to give you an example of on-weeding owing, this one was a blueberry field here in New Jersey covered with yellow nutsedge in organic production. So they owe the field, that's what you see on the right picture. One of the problems is that they did they were really owing very hard on basically they damage the roots, they dig up the roots of the plant. The roots are exposed to the atmosphere. So it's not really a good job at owing. You have to be extremely careful. You don't want to do something too deep because you don't want to start touching the root system. So the last one that I wanted to mention today are chemical weed control options. So starting with the ones that, really at this time of the year, that's perfect timing for starting to apply this pre-emergence herbicide. So pre-emergence herbicide are the herbicide that you will apply on the ground. This one will not kill any emerged weeds present at the time of application. They do not prevent seeds from germinating. They do not kill the dormant seeds. The way they're working is that usually you will have in the soil, you will have the seed germination, and at some point, the hypocotyl will grow in the soil and will have to pass through a chemical barrier. So you will have this layer of soil with 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inches of soil, which is containing the herbicide. And when the seedlings will grow to this layer of soil, it will absorb the herbicide, and the herbicide will kill or stunt the seedlings. So that's the way these pre-emergence herbicides are working. So there is quite a few recommendations that we really need to respect if we want to get good control with pre-emergence herbicide. You really want to start clean. You don't want to get any vegetation residues on the soil, because anything that is on the soil that may intercept your spray solution will reduce the quantity of herbicide that you're putting to the ground. So it will reduce the efficiency of your herbicide application. In any case, you want to do spring application before bud break. You don't want to apply pre-emergence herbicide when the crop is not dormant anymore, because you may risk to get some injury. And I will show you some picture of what happened last year in New Jersey with that. Most of the time, you need to adjust the rate of pre-emergence herbicide with soil type and organic matter. You need to have uniform spray coverage with this type of herbicide. That's why boom calibration is really critical. And activation, which is basically incorporating this herbicide, not just letting the herbicide standing at the surface of the soil, but you need to get deeper in the soil to be really active and activated. So that's the incorporation process. On the way we are doing it with most pre-emergence herbicide is through rainfall or irrigation. So you need to get at least half an inch of rainfall or irrigation to move this herbicide into the ground. And you don't want to use drip irrigation, because if you're using drip irrigation, you will just be washing off the herbicide from the soil profile. And once you apply this pre-emergence herbicide, you don't want to disturb the ground too much. So you want to reduce the traffic, because any disturbance will break the layer of soil where you have the herbicide. So just some pre-emergence herbicide for grass control. So we have Gallery, which is good for grass and broadleaf control as well. This one is just labeled in blueberry for new planting. The Reynolds, Surflan, Solicam are really good grass herbicide. This one are also labeled on cranberry, so which is not the case of Curb. Curb is it's a grass control pre-emergence herbicide. It's really nice in blueberry because it can provide control of some tough to control grasses like quackgrass. So we have it in blueberry. I didn't check the label today, but I don't think it's labeled for cranberry. But for sure, the Reynolds, Surflan, Solicam are labeled on cranberries as well. All of them are really good grass activity, and some of them, Curb, Solicam, may have fair activity on broadleaf species as well. Looking at the broadleaf control, again, Gallery, that I mentioned previously. Otherwise, we're looking at Callisto, Chateau, Cazeron, Matrix, Princeps, Sinbar, and a new one, Zeus Prime. All of them have decent to good broadleaf control. Matrix is really specific because Matrix will, I classified it in the grasses, but sedges, like yellow nut sedge, are not really grasses. It's a different family. But Matrix has really good activity on sedges. So, it's something that we recommend for sedge control. Dandelion may be controlled as well with Matrix. Zeus Prime, which is a relatively new herbicide, is relatively good on sedge as well. So just to give you some information on Zeus Prime, because it's new. So Zeus Prime, it's a premix of sulfentrazone and carfentrazone. Both are PPO inhibitor herbicide. And sulfentrazone is really the one in the mix which is giving you the pre-emergence control. Carfentrazone is just post-emergence control, but it's not the greatest post-emergence control that we can get with carfentrazone. So this one, Zeus Prime, is for pre-emergence weed control. Carfentrazone in the mix will provide a little bit of burn down, but you have to make sure that you will get burn down if your broadleaves are less than 3 inches after emerging. Otherwise, carfentrazone in the mix will not provide any control of them. If you're using the highest application rate, as I was mentioning before, you can get some control of yellow nut sedge with sulfentrazone. You don't want to apply this herbicide if the plant has been established for less than 2 years. You need to respect a minimum of 60 days between application. And I don't know in Connecticut, but here in New Jersey, we have to be aware of PPO resistance, especially because last year we just confirmed that we had common ragweed populations that were getting resistant to PPO herbicides. So we have to be extremely careful with this one. Just to show you a picture of an experimentation we did last year, show Chateau, Callisto on the top. You see some goosegrass growing right here. Chateau, Callisto will really give you good control of the broadleaf species, but are not so good on grasses. Zeus on the bottom left really have good control of both broadleaf and grasses as well. No control of the perennial. You can see the dewberries starting to crawl on the row. So the dewberries that we had in this field, the only herbicide that may eventually control it may be glyphosate post-emergence. Otherwise, none of the pre-emergence herbicide will control it. You may have heard of a new herbicide that has recently been labeled on blueberry, Alion herbicide. So it's invasive flam, same family as diclofenac, Cazeron, or isoxaben Gallery. It's labeled for pre-emergence weed control. It has generally little effect on developed leaves and tissues, so it's really, it has to be in the soil. You can apply it on some emerged weeds. It will not control them. At this point, we don't have any resistance known in North America. It's really the most, indaziflame is really the most effective cellular biosynthesis inhibitor of herbicide that has been discovered so far. So it's really good on grasses, on crabgrass, fall panicole, annual bluegrass, goosegrass, foxtail. Broadleaf, it will give you good control of smartweed, ragweed, horseweed, carpetweed, and lawn squatter. So, I mean, right here we have some tough to control broadleaf weeds. Ragweed, lawn squatter, not so easy to control. So, indaziflame is really providing good control of these species. Just to give you, I mean, on this slide, you have just some ideas on the rate. So, it will be dependent on your percentage of organic matter. Usually, we are recommending to apply in late fall or spring before bud swell, but you don't want to apply that when the plant is not dormant anymore. So just a picture to show you what kind of control. I mean, it was a treatment that an experimentation that Bayer conducted in Pennsylvania, looking in apples. So 4 months after treatment, you still have exceptionally clean ground with Alion as compared to Camex, Solicams, and Roundup on the left side. I've seen trial where up to 6 months later, I mean, the soil was still perfectly clean with Alion. That's quite amazing. So just to show you some picture, really good on Besancon plantain, common lawn squatter, and actually on large crabgrass, Alion red color was really the best on large crabgrass. One of the disadvantages of Alion is that you really need to provide adequate moisture within 3 weeks of application. And I guess that's really a nice illustration of what we mean by adequate moisture on activation of the herbicide. So on the upper portion of the slides, I mean, you have the weeds planted at 0.4 inches deep or planted at 2.4 inches deep. If you have wet condition, if you have good activation of the herbicide, you will get perfect control. You will have clean ground. If you don't have any good watering irrigation for for activating the herbicide, you can really see that the weeds that have been planted deeper in the soil. If you don't have the right condition, you will not get good herbicide control because you don't have this activation going on. So that's really important to consider that you need to provide this moisture within 3 weeks of application to make sure that the herbicide will provide efficient control. One of the big disadvantages of Alion, and that's one reason why we cannot use it here in New Jersey in blueberry, is that you cannot use it on sandy soil or soil that have 20% or more gravel content. So I mean, it's really restrictive. And actually, in New Jersey, that's the main reason why I don't want growers to use it, because I'm quite concerned with potential damage with this one. So just, this slide is just discussing briefly post-emergence herbicides. So we have glufosinate, we have products like gramoxone, AIM, glyphosate, Roundup basically. So with this herbicide, especially Roundup, you don't want to let any non-selective herbicides like Roundup getting in touch with green or living plant tissue, because these herbicides can translocate and you may carry over damage over quite a few years. So for new plantings, if you're planning to use this kind of post-emergence herbicide, you need to make sure that you're using protective shields around the plant for preventing any damage. With this kind of herbicide, the weed size matters, and you have to be aware of herbicide resistance in some weed species. Again, common ragweed, we have resistance to glyphosate that has been confirmed in New Jersey as well. So make sure that you're not trying to control a plant that has been resistant to this herbicide before. With most of these herbicides, you need to use a surfactant to improve the penetration of the herbicide. So make sure that you're doing a good job at reading the label and following the recommendation of the label for getting good control. And I wanted to finish this presentation by illustrating something that happened last year with one herbicide in New Jersey, in blueberry. So we had some severe phytotoxicity on blueberry in New Jersey in spring 2017, started to observe the first symptoms in late May, early June. So most of the time we were starting to observe some necrotic left edges. So the burn that you can see on the edge of the leaves. Some chlorosis as well on the new shoots. Later, we started to see this kind of russeting, this equatorial russeting on the maturing fruits, and up to the point that in some situations the fruits were not able to expand anymore, and we started to see some fruit splitting. So very concerned, really big problem last year in New Jersey. And actually, something that was one of the big characteristics of last year in the region was we had a very, very early phenology. We reached the 320-degree days, which is corresponding roughly to the T3 stage. So when bud scales start to get a little bit more loose, we started to see this stage on March 4, 2017 last year, compared to more than 1 month later in 2015. So we are really early for the blueberry phenology last year. The problem is that the grower were still applying. You can see on this graph the day of year. So 90 days will be roughly at the end of March. And you have the percentage of the different stages. So T3, we are usually recommending the grower to apply herbicide before the T3 stage. And actually, we were so early last year that the growers applied the herbicide mostly between the T3 and bloom stage. So we're really late in terms of application. What we managed to see that, with one herbicide, specifically with Prowl H2O, we started to see some damage on the root system of the plant. So right here, we ran a quick analysis. We tried to identify the field where we had damage. We dig up some blueberry plant. We looked at the roots because we were concerned that one of the herbicides that we applied in spring may have caused some damage. When we are looking at the result, basically, all the crop injury, where we had crop injury, basically, where all the field where Prowl H2O was applied pre-emergence last spring. And just to give you a picture of what happened, the picture on the bottom left, you can really see the root system of a plant where we observe the kind of fruit damage that I presented before. You can see the root system. We are mostly missing most of the fine, hairy roots of this root system. So everything that can be used by the root system for feeding the plant was missing on this root system. Same field, plant that was sprayed with Solicam. We didn't have this problem on the plant. We're not presenting any damage. So basically, we were able to link the phytotoxicity symptoms with the pre-emergent use of Prowl herbicide last year. So the risk factor associated with this herbicide were including the timing application versus the crop phenology. So we should have been applying the herbicide way earlier in the season. Most of the growers use the highest labor rate of Prowl herbicide, 6 crops per acre, so that's a very high rate. And in New Jersey, the soil texture, the sandy soil, low organic matter content of the soil was an aggravating factor for this kind of injury. And finally, blueberry right here in New Jersey, we have a very shallow root system, making the roots way more sensitive to potential damage. So we discussed with BASF, and BASF informed us that, the supplemental label that we had for Prowl H2O in blueberry will expire on January 1st, 2019, and it will not be renewed. And BASF is recommending again the use of Prowl H2O on canberries and bushberries during the 2018 season. It was not a problem that had been detected before. So I wanted to present that to you today. And finally, this last slide of the presentation is just, to sum up what we discussed today, a time frame of what needs to be done in the year in terms of herbicide application, weed emergence, scouting on plant phenology. So that's just to summarize what we discussed a little bit today. So with that, if we have time, I will take any question you may have at this time.
We do have one question. What impact do these weed control products have on pollinators such as bees, honeybees in particular? Okay,
so yes, so thank you for the question. The main problem is, if you're controlling, let's say that if you have clover, if you're trying to use herbicide to control clover in your row middle, it will deprive basically the bees of any pollen source, basically, because I've seen a lot of bees feeding, for example, on clover in peach orchard. So you're making sure that if you're using an herbicide to prevent clover from invading your row middle, the bees will not be attracted anymore because the bees will not find any food for feeding. At the same time, if they don't find any food in the orchard, most of the time bees are really sensitive, not so much to the herbicide, but mostly to the fungicide on insecticide application. So sometimes using herbicide for preventing some broadleaf species in your plantation may be a good way for avoiding the bees to come first place in your orchard and being exposed to to fungicide or insecticide. Directly, I don't have any information. I don't find any information of direct relationship between the toxicity of the herbicide on the bees. So that's what I would conclude on this one. Yeah.
We also have a comment. I find it interesting that one person's weed is another person's medicinal plant or purposely planted.
Yeah, that's a nice comment. I mean, it's the definition of what is a weed is really a subjective definition. If you're considering some, it's interesting. Here at Rutgers, we have one of the professor is working on ethnic crops. I learned something with him is that yellow nutsedge, which is one of the #1 weeds that we are facing in veggies and even in blueberries, actually you can turn it into a crop. Okay, it's in Africa. There's some selected varieties of yellow nutsedge that will produce bigger nuts, and they can harvest the nuts and do a flour. And basically, it has some very interesting property for nutrition and for vitamins. It's complete change of paradigm for me because it's not a weed anymore. I mean, actually, with this guy at Rutgers, we are working on developing these tiger nuts, so this variety of nutsedge. Up to 2 years ago, it was a weed, and now I'm trying to protect it and cultivating it. So it's a very subjective definition.
Are there any other questions for the speaker?
Well, thank you very much, Thierry, and thank you to everyone who joined us. This webinar was recorded and will be up on the UConn IPM website. I will send out an email with a link once everything is done. So thanks for joining us today. And thank you very much, Thierry.
So thank you very much, and thank you for being patient with my French accent. I'm sorry for that, but I will not hide it. I'm sorry for the power surge. I'm glad that we managed to go through that and finish the presentation.